hop on today and then we will get started. I hope that everyone has had a phenomenal week and that you're just so excited to come into the weekend to enter into hopefully a place of rest for you. I know this has been an interesting week all around for Grace in the Breaking. We were able to get some things launched as free e-resources on graceinthebreaking.com, and we're just so excited about those. So if you go to graceinthebreaking.com and you go to the read and learn page and scroll down to free e-resources, you will find warfare declarations. You will find how to anoint your home. You will find how to pray. You will find soul tie inventories. And last but not least, you will find midnight prayer points. These resources are put together to not only equip you to get your house back in order, but to remind you of your identity and the power and authority that lives inside of you. For those that are just hopping on, welcome. Please like and share this broadcast so that more people have access to it. But I'm Elizabeth Everett, Grace in the Breaking Ministry, and this week we have been in a three-part series called Guarding What God Restores, and we're in part 3 today. And last but not least of this week, guarding the legacy. And you know what, guys? I have some really interesting and exciting news. For the first time ever, Grace in the Breaking is going to be offering 1 month free of our Inner Access community. That is our all access. So that is weekly meetings, that is access to all past and present master classes, and we're so excited about that. And so if that is something that you think you're interested in, then you need to message me access after this, and I will get you plugged in with a link, and we meet on Wednesday night. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And apologies, I'm a little bit stuffy. I think it's been so hot, and mowing the grass and doing things outside, it's got me a little congested, so apologies ahead of time. So this week we've talked about guarding against Wednesday we talked about guarding the re-entry and recognizing old patterns as they try to walk back through a door that we've already closed, wearing the disguise of maturity or even a second chance. I hope that gave some of you language for something that you've been feeling but quite couldn't name. So this morning, I want to close this series by widening the lens just a little more, because guarding was never just a part about protecting yourself. Guarding done faithfully over time becomes the very thing you eventually hand forward to the people watching in your life. So today, with part 3 of Guarding What God Restored, is guarding the legacy. For those that are just jumping on, hi, welcome, welcome, welcome. Please like and share this broadcast. I'm Elizabeth Everett, and this is Grace in the Breaking. So guard the good deposit that was entrusted to you. Guard it with the help of the Holy Spirit who lives in us. That's 2 Timothy 1, verse 14. I love this verse because of one word in particular, deposit. Paul isn't telling Timothy to guard something he earned or built entirely on his own. He's telling him to guard something that was entrusted to him, something given, something he's now responsible to steward well and eventually pass along intact, maybe even increased to the next generation. I want you to sit with that for a moment. That's exactly the posture that I want you to leave with today about everything that God has restored in you in this season. It was never just for you. It was deposited in you in part so that it could eventually become entrusted to someone else, whether it's a child, a friend, or a woman that's in the very Inner Access community who's 3 steps behind the same road that you are on. Ruth, Naomi, and the legacy they almost left behind. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Ruth 1, verse 16. I think about Naomi when I think about legacy because her story could have ended in total bitterness. I mean, look, she lost her husband, both her sons, and told people to call her Mara, meaning bitter, because she believed the Lord had dealt harshly with her. If Naomi's story had stopped in that moment of loss and bitterness, that would have been the entire legacy handed forward. Do you grasp how massive that is? But you know what? Naomi kept guarding something even in her grief. She guarded her relationship with God's people, even while grieving. She guarded her willingness to eventually receive good again, even after devastating loss. What got handed forward wasn't the bitterness, it was Ruth's faithfulness, Boaz's redemption, and eventually a family line that led to King David and further still to Christ himself. Naomi could have never imagined the scope of legacy that she was quietly guarding in her darkest season. And neither can you fully right now. That's exactly why the guarding matters, regardless of whether you can see the full picture yet. Thank you, Lord. I'm going to tell you something. Legacy is built in the boring middle. We've all been there. I want to correct a misconception before we go further, though, because I think it trips a lot of us women up who are eager to see our story matter for someone else. We tend to picture legacy as something that gets established in one big dramatic moment, a powerful testimony shared on stage, a single conversation with your child that changes everything forever. Those moments happen and they do matter, but legacy is actually built almost entirely in the boring middle, in the thousands of small, unremarkable, unwitnessed choices you make every day when nobody's watching and nothing dramatic is happening at all. Ooh, that one hits. It's built in how you handle a minor disappointment on a random Tuesday. It's built in whether you gossip about your ex in front of your kids or you hold your tongue when nobody would even know if you didn't. It's built in whether you keep showing up in community, even in the seasons when you don't feel like you need it anymore. Legacy isn't a highlight reel, friends. It's the sum of everything that happens off camera over years that nobody but God is actually watching consistently. I want that to sit with you a minute. This is why, again, community is so important. We're not meant to do life alone, and Inner Access was created for that. And I want to remind you, like I said at the beginning of this, first of all, I'm Elizabeth Everett. For those of you just hopping on, please like and share this broadcast. But I am offering, for the next 2 weeks, I'm opening up the Inner Access, which is all access, community free for 1 month, for 4 weeks. So we meet on Wednesday nights weekly. We have assignments to complete during the week. You have access to all of the past master classes as well as the future ones. So it's a great way to connect, to see exactly what we do in this accountability container for healing and deliverance, and see if it's the right fit for you. So it's a great value. And if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me afterwards, a message access, and I will get you plugged in. So here's the thing. It's built in how you handle that minor disappointment. So let me remind you, Timothy's grandmother and mother, I have reminded you of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother, Lois, and in your mother, Eunice. 2 Timothy 1:5. I love that verse comes just before Paul's charge to Timothy to guard the good deposit, because it shows exactly what a guarded legacy looks like, traced across 3 generations. Paul doesn't just credit Timothy's faith. He names Lois and Eunice specifically, 2 women whose faithfulness, guarded and lived out over years, became the very soil Timothy's own faith grew out of. Neither of them could have known in their own ordinary days of faithfulness, that they were shaping a young man who would become one of the most trusted voices in the early church, discipled personally by Paul himself. That's what a guarded legacy actually produces most of the time. It's not dramatic, it's visible. It's a visible monument you get to see completed in your lifetime, but quiet faithfulness that shapes someone else's faith so deeply that generations later, someone can still trace the sincerity back to your name specifically, the way that Paul traced Timothy's faith back to his grandmother. So you see, this is a bigger picture than just what's happening with you. It's about generations to come. It's legacy wealth. Do you understand that? That's why guarding a legacy actually produces lifelong changes. And I'm going to tell you something. There was a legacy that I almost didn't guard at one time. I wanted to share something personal here because I don't think the teaching means much to you without my brutal honesty attached to it. There was a period after my own hardest season where I genuinely considered staying quiet about everything that I walked through. It felt safer, felt more private because I was embarrassed. I carried a guilt, shame, and condemnation around. And you know what? Nobody would have questioned me if I would simply move forward without ever turning around to help anyone else navigate the same road. Why? Because I didn't share. I stayed in isolation because the devil is a liar. And I thought I was too much. I had been burned. But see, these are the tactics of what the enemy likes to play over and over. That is why Inner Access Community was created. This is why community is so important. What changed my mind wasn't a single dramatic moment. It wasn't slowly realizing that everything I had walked through, everything that had cost me so much, would simply die with me if I didn't guard it well enough to eventually hand it forward. Grace in the breaking? Honey, it exists honestly because I decided the deposit wasn't just mine to keep anymore. It was mine to guard well enough to give away because God told me to. I think about that decision every single time I sit down to build something for this community, including today's teaching. Because I'm going to tell you something, when you have a legacy and you don't guard it, sometimes we want to take the easy way out because it's the clearest way to value something is to see plainly what happens without it. An unguarded legacy doesn't disappear all at once. It erodes slowly. The same way unguarded ground gets choked by thorns rather than destroyed in one single storm. A family that never guards honest communication slowly drifts into a generation of surface level relationships where nobody actually knows one another. I've seen that. I have seen that not just in my own family, but in a marriage that I was in. And let me tell you, that goes down to generations. You don't want that. A woman who never guards her healing slowly, quietly hands her children the same wounds that she inherited, dressed up in slightly different circumstances. Do you see why the evil runs in your family till it runs into you? And do you see the call on your life to stand up and do something about it? It's meant to help you take seriously the absence of guarding because it isn't neutral. It has its own direction, and direction tends to lead backward toward the very patterns that you already fought so hard to believe. What you don't guard, you eventually lose the right to pass on. Here's a hard truth I want you to sit with this morning, that you cannot hand forward what you didn't guard. If you let an old pattern quietly walk back in, if you let your testimony go unspoken until it fades into the background, if you let restored ground get slowly overtaken by weeds you never bothered to pull, there won't be anything intact left to actually deposit to the next generation. The legacy isn't automatic just because a breakthrough happened once. It requires guarding. And we've spent this whole last week talking about it, sustained over years, not just claimed once and presumed or assumed it's going to be permanent. You got to work at it. This is why this whole 3-part series this week was built towards this moment. Guarding your testimony matters because an unguarded testimony has nothing left to hand forward. Guarding against re-entry matters because a reclaimed door means the old pattern doesn't get passed down instead of a new freedom. And guarding the legacy is simply the sum of both things, sustained long enough that it becomes something durable, something you teach your children or the women around you that can actually stand on, not just admire from a distance. Remember, we've talked about how people watch you get up from being knocked down. And your testimony, your healing, your breakthrough is tied when you use your voice to someone else's roadmap of healing. This is why community matters. This is why I am offering for the first time ever and may never offer again 1 month free access to the Inner Access. That is meeting weekly in community. That is working through healing, deliverance, and you have access to all past masterclasses as well as the future one going on. So if that is something that you're interested in, message me, access, get in the room, and start taking back what the enemy stole. Because guarding that testimony matters. Because you're guarding it for someone you may have never met. I want to leave you with one more picture before we close because I think it's the most humbling part of this entire teaching this whole week. Some of what you guard today, some of the faithfulness you practice in the boring middle of an ordinary week may not reach your own children at all. It may reach a woman 2 generations from now whose name you'll never know, who will one day trace her freedom back to your name. For through a line of women who guarded what they were given faithfully, quietly, without ever meeting the person it would eventually save. That should not feel discouraging. It should feel enormous. You are not guarding for the people who are currently at your table. You're guarding for a legacy whose full reach was never meant to see from where you are standing. That is exactly what Naomi was doing when she stayed faithful in her grief. That is exactly what Lois and Eunice were doing generations before anyone had ever heard of Timothy. Do you see the magnitude? Let alone the churches that he would help build one day. Your faithfulness today is bigger than your own eyes will get to confirm. Guard it anyways. You won't see the full legacy in your lifetime. And I want to prepare you for something that is so important because I don't want anyone leaving this morning discouraged that they can't see the full impact of what they're guarding. Most legacy isn't visible to the person guarding it. Naomi didn't live to see her family line lead to Christ. Abraham didn't see the full nation that God promised him. You will likely guard far more than you will ever get to witness the complete fruit of, and that has to be okay. Guarding a legacy is an act of faith precisely because most of the harvest happens after you, not in front of you. But that doesn't make the guarding any less important, my friends. It makes it more purely an act of trust because you're doing it for a future generation that may never fully see it with your eyes. So before we close, I'm going to give you words over legacy, your specific guarding, specific to the name that you're about to write down. You might pray something like, Lord, thank you for what you have restored in me and what you're still restoring. I don't fully understand this deposit or what it will grow into or who will receive it, but I trust you with the parts that I cannot see. Help me guard it faithfully in the boring, the unwitnessed days, not just the dramatic ones. Let what I hand forth be worth receiving, not because I was perfect, because that I was faithful to steward what you have entrusted with me. Carry that prayer with you today, not through the ordinary Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, or Fridays that are to come, because that's usually where legacy is built. I want to remind you right now, message access if you're not in a community, because Inner Access is going to be available free for 1 month only. Guarding is an act of love and the weight of being watched. I want you to honestly think about how heavy it can feel if we're not careful. The fact that you're being watched closely by people who will be shaped by what they see in you, whether or not you ever intended to be an example to them. It doesn't mean to add pressure or perfectionism to your life. No, God isn't asking you to perform flawlessly for an audience. But what I do want you to take seriously is the reality that your children are watching, that your family is watching, that your friends are watching. They're watching you get up, they're watching you move, and they're watching you get healed. You, my friend, are the generational curse breaker. You, my friend, are building legacy. This is why community, it's so important. When you have Inner Access sisters, the women who are with you in the seasons of absorbing far more, watching actually, than anything that you've walked through alone. They're watching whether freedom that you talk about on Wednesday nights show up in how you handle Tuesday's disappointments. And they're watching how the boundaries you declared in 1 week or tomorrow have actually going to hold up in 3 days or even in 3 months. Legacy isn't built by what you say, it's what you believe. It's built by what the people closest to you can actually verify by watching you live. Let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Those boundaries are for a reason, and they are healthy, and you are a generational curse breaker. Again, that is why Inner Access community exists. Guarding the legacy requires company. And I want to be honest with you about something that I've learned the hard way. It is nearly impossible to guard a legacy alone, especially over the long haul, without people helping you stay accountable to it. Willpower is not, I repeat, it is not a legacy strategy. It gets you through a season, maybe even a strong one. But legacy is measured in years and decades, and nobody sustains decades of faithful guarding purely on personal discipline, especially not while raising children, healing from a divorce, building a new season, and living in an actual life at the same time. This, again, is why Inner Access community matters so much to me. This is why 1 month free message access, get in the community. This is why I keep bringing it up every single time I go live. It's not a program that you complete or graduate from. It's meant to be ongoing company that helps you guard what God has restored for years, long after a particular series has ended, long after a particular feeling of a teaching has faded into the ordinary. If you want your legacy to actually hold, you need people around you who are also committed to holding theirs so that they can watch you guard ground together instead of quietly trying to guard something in your own plot of isolation. If you are not yet inside of Inner Access, I need you to message the word access, and I'm going to get you access free for 1 month. I don't want you guarding a legacy alone that was never meant for that. It was meant to be guarded in community. And I want to close with something face forwarding, because guarding was never meant to be the final word, only a necessary one. Once ground is truly guarded, truly secure, it becomes ground you actually build on instead of ground you're constantly worried about losing. That's exactly the transition so many of you are standing in right now. Moving from a season of protecting what God restored into a season, then actually learning how to build on it. If that's where you find yourself, that's precisely where the Rise Up Mastermind exists, a personalized roadmap, accountability for building the next dream God has put in you and in front of you. Whatever that looks like for your specific calling, you don't build a long-lasting legacy on unguarded ground. But once the ground is guarded, building becomes not just possible, but it's the next natural step. So I want to remind you that what was deposited into you and me was never ours to hoard or to loose carelessly. We got to learn to guard it faithfully right in the middle of the boring just as much as in the dramatic moments, so that what God restored in us becomes what we hand forward. I don't know about you, but my legacy is being built today in small, unwitnessed choices. And I will not despise the ordinary days, and neither should you. I want you to name one specific person, a child, a friend, or a woman that you know, who you sense God wants to eventually receive something of what He's restored in you. Write their name down and let that be part of what motivates you guarding this week, not out of pressure, but out of purpose. This closes the ground you stand on and what God has restored. As you continue throughout your week, you need to stand on your new ground. You need to guard it and let it become something durable enough to hand forward. Learn to steward it. Learn to multiply it. This is not a small thing that you're called to do. This is generational. And if you've walked through this week and you still don't have a community of women guarding you along this journey, message the word access. I don't want any part of what God has done in you to be carried alone. I want you to know that you have accountability. And I want you to know that your first month of Inner Access, when you message access, will be free. You're going to have a community of women. We meet weekly. We have an active Telegram account, and you get full access to all of the past master classes as well as the one that is going on. So you really have nothing to lose. This is your invitation. This is your sign. And I also want to remind you of some new resources that dropped with Grace in the Breaking. So if you go to graceinthebreaking.com and you go to the Read and Learn section, you will see the books that I have written. You will see our e-courses. But if you keep scrolling down to the free e-resources, you're going to see warfare declarations, how to anoint your home, how to pray with authority, soul tie inventory, and midnight prayer points. Those are downloadable pieces of information to help you take back what the enemy stole, to help you get your home back in order. If you have a prayer request, go to graceinthebreaking.com, put your prayer request down for me. It comes right to me, not my team, and I will pray over it. I will keep it confidential, and I will stand with you. If you want to support the ministry, please check out the shop. You can see some of the gear that we have to wear your faith proudly. Listen, friends, I want to remind you, Inner Access, you can try for 1 month, see if it's where you belong, and step into healing. Because, baby, today is the day that you take back everything the enemy stole, but it takes your yes to move forward. May God bless you and keep you.